Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are cracking open a concept that most of us were raised to believe was just an unconditional virtue. Politeness. We're used to thinking of it as simple manners, But the source material we dug into, it just flips that completely. It argues that these neurotypical politeness norms, they're not just etiquette.
No.
They operate as a sophisticated and often weaponized social technology.
That's the core claim, exactly. It's an infrastructure of civility, sure, but one that's built not just to lubricate interactions, but to control them.
Okay.
And this deep dive, it looks at that system specifically through the experience of neurodivergent people, particularly those who are autistic or ADHD.
Right.
And for this group, the argument is really powerful. It says this system is designed to protect harm, to punish anyone who dares to tell the truth plainly, and crucially, it uses ambiguity as its #1 tool of control.
So it sounds like the whole system it's fundamentally fragile.
It is, because it demands what the source calls forced harmony. It's designed to kick in during times of high social stress, think mandatory workplace bonding, or, the one we all know.
Tense family gatherings.
The tense family gathering, exactly.
So here's the central tension we're exploring then. For many people, politeness is pure theater. It's this carefully choreographed performance, right, involving swallowed truths and softened edges. But when autistic clarity enters the room, meaning someone just names what is actually happening rather than what's supposed to be performed, that whole choreography just breaks down.
It shatters.
Yeah.
And the system registers that clarity as a threat.
So let's unpack this idea of politeness as ritual. If it's not really about kindness, what is it designed to do?
Well, it demands harmony, but it's a harmony that's achieved through suppression, not through genuine safety or resolution.
Right.
The ritual requires concealment. The source describes it as a seasonal ceasefire where discomfort is concealed, not resolved.
That's a great phrase.
It is. Imagine a family member makes a really barbed comment at dinner. The politeness infrastructure. It demands that everyone just swallows that discomfort for the sake of the moment.
And what's fascinating there is just how convenient that system is. The harmony is preserved, but at the cost of genuine safety for the person who got the barb.
Precisely. And this is why the system is so beneficial to the majority, or, to those in power in that room. When that equilibrium is disrupted, the norms dictate that the person who speaks up and names the harm.
They become the problem.
They become the problem, not the person who caused it. The manipulator is protected by the very norms they're weaponizing. Politeness in this context becomes armor for the coercive and a muzzle for the perceptive.
Wow, that completely reframes kindness. It sounds like this system makes any genuine, necessary confrontation basically impossible.
And that's the point. It is. The source argues this is social control just disguised as a virtue. I mean, think about the common phrases we hear, especially in family or work settings.
Be nice.
Be nice, be flexible, let it go. These are not invitations to care. They are demands for containment. They function as a disciplinary system designed to sculpt the room into something manageable for the powerful.
So the goal is always just preserving the illusion of peace.
Always. Never genuine care or resolution.
So if politeness is the mask, let's look at how coercion uses it as camouflage. I mean, we've all seen it. The manipulation that's wrapped in kindness, the subtle slight delivered with a gentle smile.
This is where the tactical use of ambiguity becomes so critical. It's a brilliant strategy for an aggressor. They craft comments that are just soft enough, just vague enough.
To give them an escape hatch.
An immediate escape hatch if they're challenged. So, for instance, instead of saying, your work is sloppy, they might say, well, that was certainly a creative approach, wasn't it? With a smile.
Ah, the plausible deniability.
Exactly. If you then challenge them on that implied criticism, the aggressor can instantly retreat into innocence. What? I was just giving you a compliment. And that gives them plausible deniability. The aggressor denies any hostile intent, and the entire room is then expected to uphold this shared fiction that the comment was harmless.
And we know those defenses by heart. The aggressor's immediate go-tos, I never said that, or the classic, you misunderstood.
Or, don't take it so personally.
Yes. And the immediate penalty for cracking that shared fiction is always tone policing. Directness is instantly reframed as rudeness. Clarity gets recast as aggression.
The neurotypical system values the comfort of the performer over the content of the observation every time. The perceptive individual, often the autistic truth-teller, is treated not as a necessary warning about reality, but as a severe disruption.
So the moment someone tells the truth, they stop being the person pointing out the problem.
And they start being the problem itself.
Yeah.
That's the mechanism. They are suddenly responsible for soothing the feelings of the very people who created the tension, just because their delivery wasn't compliant with the forced harmony ritual.
This whole system just creates the perfect environment for exploitation. The research argues that prioritizing this kind of politeness creates the perfect fog for people who rely on manipulation.
Well, manipulators understand the system better than anyone because they know neurotypical norms prize inference over clarity
Inference over clarity.
and interpretation over evidence. They thrive in that murky, unspoken gap between what was said and what was actually intended. They can load up a sentence with double meanings, knowing the recipient will be expected to read between the lines, rather than just hold them accountable for their words.
So the burden of translation is always placed on the person receiving the potential harm.
Always. And when someone finally points directly at that harm, which the source notes is often the perceptive autistic person, that's when the credibility politics just snap right into place.
Okay, let's talk about those credibility politics. How does the system automatically decide who to trust in that moment?
Well, in this hierarchy, the polite aggressor is automatically believed. Why? Because their delivery conforms perfectly to the established social norm. They smiled, they used soft language, therefore, they must be harmless.
And the direct witness.
The one who broke the script by speaking plainly. They're immediately treated with intense suspicion. The system asks, are you sure that's what happened? The scrutiny shifts entirely to the claimant's tone, their timing, their emotional expression, anything but the content of the actual claim.
You can see that in a workplace setting so clearly. Someone raises a concern in an email that is direct, unambiguous, but doesn't have the fluff, the pleasantries.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're judged on their attitude before the facts of the complaint are even looked at.
Exactly. And the penalties for breaking that script are swift and painful. The sanctions are mainly social. Invitations stop arriving. Group chats go silent. Your reputation is quietly tarnished by people whispering, they're just so difficult, or they're aggressive. And in formal settings, it can escalate to HR interventions because the complaint was delivered unprofessionally.
Wow.
The source states plainly that neurodivergent people learn very early that honesty is expensive. They pay a social cost the manipulator will never face simply for speaking without a mask.
Okay, let's shift perspective a bit, because the research introduces an alternative viewpoint, drawing on discursive psychological work. For you listening, that just means analyzing how language is used in real time to do things socially.
Right. To exert power, to resist, to negotiate, it looks beyond the surface meaning to the social function. And traditionally, autistic communication is framed as a failure too blunt, too literal, a deficit.
Right.
But the data shows deliberateness, not deficit.
So when a neurotypical listener hears bluntness, the research suggests that's actually a misreading of a highly functional communication strategy.
That's the key reframing. If you look at the interactional data, what you see are highly skilled social moves. An autistic refusal, a deliberate hesitation, a direct account. These are not failures. They function as clarity.
They function as clarity.
Yes. They surface these tacit pressures and they hold other people accountable for what they are actually asking or doing. If someone asks a vague, loaded question, the direct, factual answer forces them to confront their own ambiguity. NT models see that as rude. Discursive analysis sees it as competence, designed to maintain integrity.
So this directness becomes its own kind of counter-technology, an anti-coercive praxis.
Precisely. That specialized term, anti-coercive praxis, just means it's a deliberate social practice aimed at stopping manipulation. Naming what is happening cuts through the fog manipulators rely on.
It eliminates the ambiguity.
It eliminates the ambiguity that produces plausible deniability. The autistic yes, no, or that's not accurate collapses the space where predatory behavior can hide. Honest speech removes the social cover that allows harm to continue quietly.
This also radically changes how we understand the double empathy problem. We often hear it framed as this symmetrical thing, a mutual misunderstanding, as if both people are equally missing the signals.
But the source argues the mismatch isn't symmetrical at all. It's a collision between two social codes with radically different power weights.
Okay.
Because neurotypical society holds the majority social capital, the neurotypical reading of an interaction is always treated as authoritative. And the autistic reading, It's treated as an error or a deviation, even when it's internally coherent and accurate.
Which means when those interpretations clash, when the NT person says, I was just joking, and the autistic person says, that was harassment, the autistic person loses by default.
Yes. The outcome is coercive. The autistic person learns to go quiet to avoid retaliation, to avoid being framed as the problem. That observation that silence becomes survival, that's not a personal failure. It's a direct result of this power dynamic.
Right.
And what's often sold to them as social skill support is really just compliance training. The autistic person is reshaped to fit the system, but the coercive, harmful system is never addressed.
Okay, let's get granular now. Let's break down the 4 specific mechanisms the source identifies that are used to reassert control without looking overtly coercive. This is the maintenance machinery.
The first and most common is tone.
Tone. It allows polite harm to pass unnoticed while it punishes impolite truth. If you wound someone with a pleasant voice and a smile, the social contract says that's fine.
It's fine.
But if you name that wound with any urgency, your tone immediately becomes the problem. It makes the content of your speech a secondary concern. It protects the performance.
It's so efficient. I mean, think about it. If a person is legitimately angry because of a harmful action, the group doesn't have to address the harm. They just have to point to the anger. They'll say, I just can't talk to you when you use that tone.
And the problem instantly shifts.
Instantly, from I was harmed to you made me uncomfortable by being loud.
Which bleeds right into the second mechanism, attitude. This is that shape-shifting accusation that reframes emotional impact as a personal fault.
It's the move that asks, how dare you make me feel something uncomfortable about the harm I committed? Attitude punishes anyone who disrupts the social equilibrium. It reminds the speaker that truth is only welcome when it's wrapped in deference.
So it's the system punishing the visible display of discomfort.
It is, because discomfort threatens the forced harmony. If tone and attitude don't work, the system escalates to rudeness. This converts etiquette into morality.
So speaking plainly suddenly becomes a moral character flaw.
Correct. Setting a clear, direct boundary becomes disrespect. Asking for factual clarification becomes being difficult. Rudeness is the mechanism that ensures decorum outranks reality every single time.
So the boundary setter is the aggressor.
Yeah, and the boundary crosser is the polite victim. And when all 3 of those fail to silence the person, the final move is overreaction. This is the ultimate silencing move. It invalidates a boundary or a truth claim by framing it as emotional excess. It tells the person that their perception is suspect, that their truth is just too inconvenient, too intense.
You're overreacting.
Your overreacting doesn't resolve the conflict. It just restores the aggressor's comfort by dissolving the victim's legitimacy. It's the institutional nod that says, we don't have to listen to you because you are behaving too intensely.
So if politeness as compliance is the problem, how do we move toward genuine safety? The source insists that for autistic people, safety rarely comes from politeness. It comes from clarity.
Exactly. Boundaries stated plainly are described as protection, not violence. The only way to counter ambiguity is with precision. Refusing the theater of politeness is framed as a survival strategy, one honed over years of navigating systems that exploit vagueness.
So authenticity restores a balance of power.
A balance that polite norms deliberately obscure, yes.
This means we really need to shift the focus from compliance training, from forcing people to mask, to building new etiquettes rooted in consent and transparency. The research lays out some really clear transitions for us.
We need to move away from the expectation, be polite, and replace it with the demand, be clear.
And shift from the oppressive goal to keep the peace toward the vital goal of honor the truth.
And instead of that constant pressure to don't make a scene, the new social standard should be don't hide what's happening. Transparency over tranquility.
This ultimately leads to this concept of autistic sovereignty over language and meaning, the right for people to name what is happening and speak in the grammar of their own clarity.
It's about restoring that balance of power.
Yes, the one the old system worked so hard to obscure.
It's the difference between being forced to speak in the language of ambiguity, which was harm hide, and speaking in the language of direct accountability.
This entire deep dive gives us a devastating insight. Politeness and forced harmony have been confused with care and truth for far too long, and that leads to situations where silence is fundamentally misread as consent. The source material argues that clarity is not the breach of the social contract. It is, in fact, the necessary boundary.
And the ultimate consequence of this analysis is realizing that the script of neurotypical social politeness.
Right.
It was never written for the survival of the perceptive, the highly attuned, or the honest. It was written to maintain a superficial comfort.
Right.
So the real question is for you, listening. What happens when individuals collectively reclaim the freedom to tell the truth and reject the script that has tried for so long to make clarity disappear? What risks are you willing to take to honor the truth over the performance?